I did everything right and they indicted me.
And I don't know what the I'm doing. Antifa!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. Apologies for the delay. We had some tech issues, which may or may not have been Mossad. You never know these days. But please do like the stream. Do all the things that we do to help push back against the algorithmic suppression. We have a great show for you today. Very quickly, I just want to run through reminders. Like the stream, become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. We are almost at 450,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe. Do that because not only do you want to just, get the word out about the show and the great guests that we have on, but also because we've been doing these extra streams in large part so that we can have on people who live in different parts of the world for whom it's inconvenient to chat at 7 p.m. EST because it's like the middle of the night for them. So just to subscribe, you hit subscribe and then the bell. And like and become Patreon supporters. And if you can do $5 a month, that gives you access to extended interviews, bonus episodes, early release. If you can't do that, then you can still sleep well at night by supporting us for $1 a month. That's $12 a year. So we have 3 great guests on for you tonight. In reverse order, we'll be speaking to Max Blumenthal, Trita Parsi, and Sana Saeed. And I'm going to bring on Sana, but just so you know, we're so excited to have her on. I think this is the Katie Halper Show debut. She's been on Useful Idiots, and we're always thrilled to have her on that. Sana is an award-winning journalist and media critic with over 15 years of experience covering how U.S. news media shapes public understanding of foreign policy, war, national security, Islam, and Palestine. She spent 10 years as an on-camera correspondent and senior producer at AJ+, where she created Backspace and the Israeli Occupation Style Guide, 2 series dedicated to media literacy in journalism. So without further ado, welcome, Sana.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining.
Of course. The chat is talking about how fabulous your hair looks, too.
I know. Yeah.
I literally said that to you when I was like, oh my God, your hair looks
You
fabulous.
did. Yeah. Thank you. Well, I'll give people a tutorial. Actually, maybe I'll do an AMA on Patreon to explain to people how it worked out this way. But yeah. And you're getting great love in the chat too. Sana is terrific. Used to watch her at ABJ Plus. Yes. You should be, if we lived in a world with justice, you'd be on everyone's screens all the time. But we are so excited that you're on this one. So before we get into kind of specific questions, what do you think has mostly slipped under the attention of the media or has been most distorted? Anything that you want to make sure that we talk about, or anything that you want to kind of correct the record on or correct the perspective on, just because you are such a voracious media consumer and analyst?
There are a lot of things that our news media, specifically here in the United States, is absolutely missing in terms of coverage that it deserves. The first thing that comes to mind, first and foremost, is, of course, Gaza. I think Gaza has, it'd be hard to argue otherwise. It's really fallen wayward in terms of our attention, and also kind of by design too, right? With the U.S. Israeli expansionist wars in Lebanon, South Lebanon, in Iran as well. It's unfortunate, and everything that we are able to hear from what is happening on the ground in Gaza is devastating. And of course, the fact that just today there were 3 people who were killed, including a child, right, in an Israeli airstrike. Whenever we are able to get any kind of drone footage out of Gaza, which shows the destruction of, neighborhoods that were still maybe standing a year ago, it's complete and utter devastation. So that's one. And another story, and again, I focus obviously on like U.S. foreign policy and the Middle East, so that's why I'm focusing on these stories. But there's also South Lebanon itself. South Lebanon has been absolutely devastated, and one of the greatest tragedies to me over the last 3 years is how, and I'd love to talk more about this, and I know we're going to get to it as well, but it's just the tragedy of the lack of recognition of what the Lebanese of the South have gone through, not just in the last 3 years, but really since the 1970s in particular. And I'll talk about that some more as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for bringing our attention to that. And it's so important to remind people of what's happening in Gaza. There's so many things that people are talking about, and at least they're important things like the Iran war, for instance. But we also have to remember that not only is this something we have to keep talking about, but it's also related, of course. And we can get
it's completely inseparable from one another, right? Like while this is happening, we hear more and more about the yellow line in Gaza taking up more and more land. I mean, it's very clear that whatever the next phase was supposed to be is taking place right now in Gaza. And also the Palestinians that I speak to in Gaza all say like, a lot of them want to be like self-sustainable. They want to work. There are a couple of the guys that I talked to. They're like, I'm saving up to buy a laptop because I'm a programmer and my laptop was destroyed. So I want, but they're like, we're not getting any attention because, people have kind of moved on and, to focus on maybe other things, or there's like a fatigue as well. And it's devastating.
Yeah. And how do you know these people in Gaza, by the way?
I connected with a lot of them over the course of the genocide. They're the Palestinians who are in our replies.
Right.
And one of the first ones was he actually joined my live, and he was in one of the refugee camps, and he joined the live, and I spoke like really broken Arabic, and we communicated. And then from that, I started connecting with more Palestinians in Gaza, also like verifying, who they were and their campaigns and everything. So I try to support campaigns still, which, unfortunately, I think a lot of people are tired of them. But it's for a lot of Palestinians in Gaza, that's the only lifeline, because aid is still not getting into Palestinians anywhere near the rate it should be in Gaza. I mean, people are struggling. They're really, really struggling, whether it's like we're getting tents, whether it's clothing and everything. So, it's the small things do make a difference, because the Palestinians they look at the names that, pop up on the campaign pages, and it makes them feel, they've said, right, like a little less alone. And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great. So Tuesday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio addressed the press on the war in Iran, giving the usual justifications and talking points, among which he included that, quote, "Our president has proven time and time again that his preference is peace, but Iran must accept the reality of the situation and come to the negotiation table." So what are your thoughts on this framing?
I mean, this administration has made it a little difficult to really figure out what it even wants ultimately, because it is this posturing, kind of trying to show the United States effectively, when we look at kind of the material damage the U.S. military, Air Force, et cetera, actually has suffered, and there have been great accounts that have actually done the entire, audit of it. The United States militarily did not win this, right? And it does feel as though everything since the, somewhat cessation of hostilities has felt like the United States posturing to kind of present itself as the victor, as the one in charge, as the one. So I don't know. I mean, it's Rubio as well. So I feel like he'll do, also he says a lot of things oftentimes which will not come into fruition. I, of course, hope that there isn't, a resumption of the hostilities. I mean, it was horrific to watch. And of course, I think all of us hope that, I mean, it's not in an ideal situation right now either, but don't want to see bombs being dropped either on civilian populations. And the Iranians currently, there's also not much coverage about this, but the Iranians are still they're really suffering as a result of the bombing campaigns, right? The economy was already in shambles prior to the U.S. And Israeli war of aggression against Iran, and now it's really, really bad. So I really hope there is not a resumption of bombing. But honestly, with this administration, I don't know. It takes maybe if Trump's numbers dip enough, who knows?
Yeah. Inshallah, for that, at least that part of it. Yeah. So I want to play a clip of Rubio from the press briefing. He's responding to a question about another area that you mentioned, Lebanon. So let's take a listen.
Mr. Secretary.
Right behind you, not Colombia, right there. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much. On Lebanon, are
Yes.
we in a ceasefire or less fire? And the second question, do you think you would be able to achieve an agreement between Lebanon and Israel without risking a civil war in Lebanon? What are you doing to risk? What are you doing to?
No, I got it. I got the gist of your question. So look, here's the challenge with Lebanon, okay? There's no problem between the Lebanese government and the Israeli government. Israel doesn't claim any land in Lebanon belongs to them. And by and large, I think a peace deal between Lebanon and Israel is imminently achievable and should be. The problem with Israel and Lebanon is not Israel or Lebanon, it's Hezbollah. Hezbollah operates from inside of Lebanese territory. They terrorize and attack Israelis, but they also are inflicting tremendous damage on the Lebanese people. The reason why Lebanon gets attacked by Israel is because of Hezbollah. Because Hezbollah is hiding in some house, launching rockets against Israelis, and then they get hit. So what you're seeing now is Israeli responses to either attacks or perceived threats. And this is not new. This has been going on for a very long time. What is our hope? Our hope is to engage the Lebanese and Israeli governments under our mediation at the table to achieve this. And that is having Lebanese armed forces and a Lebanese government, not just with a willingness, but with the capability to begin to challenge Hezbollah and disarm them. Because the Lebanese people are also victims of Hezbollah. And by the way, on the topic of Hezbollah in Lebanon, who is behind Hezbollah? Why do they exist? They're an agent of Iran. If you go through that middle...
Okay, so why does Hezbollah exist? They're an agent of Iran. I mean, where do you want to begin in terms of the debunking?
Yeah, I hate having to listen to Rubio for more than a second.
No.
But I mean, this entire narrative is one we hear every single time. It's like, well, Israel's only doing this because of, now it's Hamas. Israel's only doing this because of Hezbollah. One of the first times that the Israelis attacked Lebanon was in 1978, which is before, by the way, Iran even, right? Like the Islamic Republic of Iran existed before the Islamic Revolution. And it was Operation Litany, I always forget the pronunciation. I've only ever read it. But in it went into South Lebanon in particular to oust, right? To kill and take out Palestinian resistance fighters. And then, of course, like Hezbollah itself formed in response to Israeli occupation. Like one of the things that really frustrates me about any and all coverage about Lebanon, and specifically the South, and this includes from even some, I feel like progressives might miss out on this, is really understanding that the history of Lebanon, especially over the last, let's say, since 1975 onwards, is really a story of also two Lebanons, right? Where you have the Israelis occupied Lebanon for almost 20 years. It was 18 years. And that occupation was concentrated in the South. And it was administered through the Israelis, but also through what was called the Lebanese South Army, which was a Lebanese Christian military. They had detention centers. There was torture. There was, it's horrific, right? Like there were checkpoints, all of these things. So the South of Lebanon was really forged through those 2 decades. And what a lot of people don't also realize is the only reason why Israel ultimately left South Lebanon in 2000 was not because of some sort of like a peace agreement. It's actually the only time until that point, especially that Israel left because it was militarily defeated. And it was because resistance in the South, which was Hezbollah, fought back. And for years, the Israelis were sustaining incredibly high casualties that they could no longer justify. And they couldn't come up with a reason to say, like, this is why we're here. Right. And we see this defeat again in 2006, right? When we had the summer war of 2006. So this constant kind of like, oh, they're in there because of Hezbollah, and like, Lebanon has no interest in Lebanese land. It's completely false. It's absolutely false.
Israel has no interest in Lebanese land, right?
Yeah, that's what I say, right? It has no interest in Lebanese land. It's just not true. It's simply not true. Because even if we let's just take out the greater, Israel plan, there's also the fact that for the Israelis, it is important for them to empty out that land, which is actively filled with a population that actively resists the occupation.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. when Hezbollah started firing those rockets, right, back in 2023, it didn't do it out of the blue. It did it in response to the Israeli genocide in Gaza. Yes, and that's the other thing, right? It's like this constant, like, take out all the context. Israel is always this poor little thing, even though it's like we're always talking about its incredible military capabilities. But oh my God, poor Israel! It's like just surrounded by people who want to kill them, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe the Israelis actually killing everyone around them.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have this interesting thing with Hezbollah, which is that people who aren't even like ideologically, obviously there's division in Lebanon and there is conflict, but it is interesting that you also have people who are not Muslim, they're not Shia, and they are extremely appreciative of Hezbollah protecting them from Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. Because look at the Lebanese army.
Yeah.
The Lebanese army is unable to protect themselves, let alone like the actual like Lebanese.
Right.
And what I think a lot of, and again, this is what I mean by there are different Lebanons as well, right? Like when we look at Lebanon, there's not just one single Lebanon. It is this like incredible and tragic, right? Like hodgepodge of different identities and communalism. And of course, that sectarianism is really built into the political system of Lebanon. But in particular, when I said earlier, there are two Lebanons, by that I was referring to like through the experience of occupation in particular, and how when we see the South, it really is like forged through the occupation, through these violent attacks from the Israelis. I mean, if we look at South Lebanon right now, there are, it was like 1 million, well, this also goes into Beirut, and so, but like over 1 million Lebanese, right, have been displaced. Almost 3,000 Lebanese have been killed since March 2nd, right? In the South, there are entire villages that have been completely decimated. Where I saw footage a couple of days ago, I thought it was Gaza that I was looking at, and it was a Lebanese village, right? And so it's like, and there are many Lebanese who have experienced this, who understand and support, you know, a Lebanese resistance. They understand that what stands against them and increased, not new, but increased Israeli aggression is going to be this group.
Right. Well, shifting gears a little bit. So last month, towards the end of April, you wrote a fascinating essay on the way that, quote, charismatic leaders of empire don't save us. They polish the gravestones. And you use a recent video of Obama and Mamdani singing nursery rhymes with children as reference. So let's watch one of these, a part of one of these videos, and then have you elaborate on your article and how charisma is used to do this.
Swish, swish, swish. Swish, swish, swish. The white was on the bus. Go swish, swish, swish. All through the town.
Okay, so they are, I mean, those kids are obviously very cute. But talk to us about the charisma of empire. And I do like in the opening of your piece, you write, I'm not immune to a charming man, a curse that has followed me for much of my life.
I was like, I have to be real. I have to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a sucker for the charisma. I really am. Right. This piece was, really kind of looking at charisma. And I don't mean charisma, as I say in the piece, like in that colloquial sense that you and I like, oh, he's so charming. She's so charming. Right. They're so, but really looking at it as a form of power and as this force, as I write, that really that plays a function within imperial power itself in order to disarm us from actually making and applying moral judgments and thus accountability. And instead it takes our qualms and collapses it into just like feelings, right? And so, and I say very, in the beginning of the piece, I say that like, I understand that in the midst of the kind of political cesspool that we're in, how for many people seeing an image of someone like Obama and then someone like Mamdani, and I say like, Obama for millions of Americans remains maybe the last great president, and Mamdani is for millions of Americans is kind of both in that lineage in terms of this, hope and change, but also someone who breaks away from the corporate Dems, who really punches back, and he is born out of this very specific insurgent political movement in the United States. But my argument in the piece is that like the charm that we're so like Obama in particular, right, has one of the most horrific records in terms of violence. He has so much blood on his hands. He is, by every account, a war criminal. And I focus specifically on his record on foreign policy and how he really changed the nature of war, right? Where the kind of authority, the unilateral authority and ease with which Trump today, right, is able to spread the violence that he spreads around the world as well. That was only possible because of what also Obama was doing during his tenure, which of course is built off of what Bush was doing. So I'm like, it all kind of builds upon each other. But Obama specifically really reimagined what American warfare looks like. And it doesn't look like conventional war anymore. In fact, I think it's really interesting that the fact that the Department of Defense is now Department of War. So there's this real kind of callback to we're done with these, clandestine operations that we're just going to say are just drone activities and so on and so forth. And of course, Jeremy Scahill wrote like a fantastic book about this. I recommend the book over the documentary because I think the book is filled with such incredible details, dirty wars. But it's like we're going back to war is what the Trump administration is doing. So I talk about how Obama has so much blood on his hands just with this one thing, and yet none of it sticks to him, right? Yeah. And how people still get really excited when they see Obama. There's so much love and so much grace that's given to him, even though he was not a great president at all in so many respects. And then we have, of course, Mamdani, and I'm not comparing, of course, Mamdani with Obama as though he's been mayor for 4 or 5 months, right? Obama was president for 8 years, has had an extremely long political career at this point. But a lot of the narratives around them do have a very, very strong parallel. And the fact that we've seen, unfortunately, Mamdani, and I'm saying this as someone who is not living in New York City. So I'm not a constituent of his. I'm someone who is looking at, again, how his power and narrative, especially with regards to Palestine, kind of flowing through our politics and our news media. And so I'm looking at Mamdani, and I understand the appeal, of course. Like, it's so hard not to like the guy. He's very, very likable. But he has made moves that I think are more than worth not just critiquing, but really saying, hey, we got to hold you accountable. Because as I call it, it's almost like a slow burn betrayal of the movement that he's not only born out of, but the movement that really pushed him into this position.
So let's review some of the examples, I guess, of each one. And another thing that I find hard to grapple with is that when there's so much unfair criticism, like I remember spending a lot of Obama's first term writing or talking about how racist someone was against him, which is an interesting way that racists and the right wing actually kind of neutralize the left. Because if we're focusing on those kind of personal attacks, to the extent that we have any power, right? But our eye is not on the systemic actual like racism and imperialism, right? So it's not on, like, I remember, and this is also because I was younger, obviously, but I was like, and I was kind of seduced by the excitement of Obama. And what's interesting? I didn't like him or Hillary really. And when I started to like him was when Hillary went after his reverend, that
Jeremiah
Wright, right? Who was like saying stuff that, my family likes to say at the dinner table. And what was it like? Goddamn America, and talking about the chickens coming home to roost. And I was like, okay, he's my guy. It was great, right? If only he had been an advisor for Obama. But it was hard. And I think this is something that happens. Like when people are being unfairly attacked, or when Zionists are maligning Zoran, for instance, like it is hard. You want to do both things at the same time, right? You want to like push back against the unfair attacks. Like someone in the comments, I don't think they were being sarcastic, wrote like Obama and Mamdani are both African communists. And it's like, if only, but right. Like, don't get me excited. But like, so how do you do those two things? Or is it just like, whatever, they're big boys, that one is president, one is mayor. We don't actually have to be like,
yeah, I don't believe in like wearing kid gloves when we're dealing with elected officials, right? And I'm also not interested in, look, when it comes to Zionists, let's say, they're going to make an issue out of everything. Like this is, to me, I do not take into account the feelings and the strategies of Zionists anymore. To me, they are
of course.
People that I just do not care for. I think what's important is for us to just constantly, because when we kind of fall into that, then it is very easy for us to hold back
Right.
on what is necessary, right? The three instances that I mentioned that I think were real missteps, and someone called this a purity test. This is not a purity test, and I'm really tired of that kind of framing, because this is a bare minimum. I'm sorry. And there's also, if we're going to have a purity test, I would certainly hope it's on genocide personally. But,
Right, yeah.
The three things that I mentioned, which really kind of point to a really, unfortunate trajectory for Mamdani is first, of course, his reappointment and praise of Jessica Tisch, right? As someone who directly, materially harmed anti-genocide, pro-Palestine protesters, who also actively helped oversee the surveillance of the Muslim community, which is why I'm like, you can't be talking to me about Islamophobia as like a feeling if you're not actually addressing and taking care and holding accountable one of the people who is materially responsible for spreading it and hurting the Muslim community, right? So I talk about Jessica Tisch. I talk about the really unnecessary quick support for Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah.
Right. Like Apex Shakur, as Charlemagne calls him. Like that was such a bizarre, and it was not necessary because he's not only one of the most ardent supporters of Israel in the Democratic Party and in general, but also someone who's very staunchly anti-socialist and openly so. Right.
And the third, a gun-toting, gun-loving socialist.
Right. And then and it was like, what, I think 2 days before Mamdani said that he would support, right, Hakeem Jeffries for speaker. Jeffries had literally voted for a resolution or whatever it was to condemn socialism, right? And then the third thing that I mentioned is this photo op, this whole thing with Obama, which is like, why are we doing this? First of all, what does Obama have to do with the Bronx? Right? What is Obama? And also, this is a type of situation, and I understand that this was done for promoting, right? Like Mamdani's new like kindergarten policy, but like it ultimately benefits, right, Obama far more than it benefits actually Mamdani, and it's just such a striking image to see someone like Mamdani called Obama evil. Just 10 years ago or less than 10 years ago. He said in a tweet, which I think now has been, of course, deleted, but he said something to the effect of Obama has shown us that that the lesser of two evils is still evil. That's a strong statement. And so almost 10 years later to be sitting with a man that you called evil and then singing, these like childhood like songs and stuff, it's stark and it's depressing. It's very depressing. And I don't think this means that you like, oh, we just burn the whole house down. Right. Like if you are someone who supports Mamdani, it's about holding to account these moves, because the thing is, and we know this especially with Zionists, right? But if like and corporate Dems, you give them an inch, they'll take you all the way out. They'll take you all the way out.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's true. And, one of the grossest things I think about Obama is how he openly said, and you quote this in your piece, what is it? Turns out I'm really good at killing people. Yeah, it turns out I'm really good at killing people. Didn't know that was going to be a strong suit of mine. So can you talk about the context of that quote?
So it was done in the context of, it's from a book, and I'm actually totally forgetting. It's just a quote that I always remember because to me, it really summarizes the really blasé attitude that, I mean, again, people try to paint sometimes politicians, and especially someone like Obama, as still having some sort of a moral compass. Right. I cannot imagine a situation where someone who is socially well-adjusted and not sociopathic being like, oh, it turns out I'm actually really good at people. It was in the context of basically the kill list and the drone strikes.
Yeah, it was in his book. I can't believe it's called this. His 2020 book called A Promised Land. Yeah. And he's talking about how unlike someone on the left, I never engaged in a wholesale condemnation of the Bush administration's approach to counter terrorism. And then he also talks about how Rahm Emanuel basically like told him he had to do this because he was perceived as liberal. And he wasn't critiquing that. Yeah.
I mean, another thing is like, who was Obama's like big foreign policy guy? It was Joe Biden. One of the reasons why Joe Biden was chosen specifically for Obama's running mate is that Obama did not have, he was seen as, in a way, like Mamdani, right? Like kind of underexperienced. He was like this young senator from Illinois, doesn't have the foreign policy chops and so on and so forth. And so this is very like, this is just standard, US federal, like presidential politics, whatever it is that the presidential candidate is lacking, you bring the vice presidential to kind of make it up for that, right?
Right.
And so Biden came in, but not only that, but Biden was huge on foreign policy and specifically on Israel. He was very big on Israel. And there's Peter Beinart actually wrote a piece back in 2020 talking about how Biden often ran interference to shield Netanyahu from criticism, any kind of, when I say criticism, I'm literally talking about like the most like milquetoast stuff, but any kind of criticism from Obama himself and his.
Yeah. And he knew the difference because when he was younger, he said something about Palestinians being oppressed. Obama, obviously, not Biden. Whereas Biden likes to remind us like 20 times a day that he's a Zionist, and if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to create him. Yeah, exactly. But what I was saying before is also like, I mean, how do you deal with this? Maybe you're totally over it. It's something I used to struggle with, but I guess I just don't anymore because I don't care. But the whole like, okay, this is our first ex-mayor, our first ex-president, right? A lot of people are like, use kid gloves precisely because these are not straight white men. So what is your advice to people who feel conflicted about that?
I don't care.
I know. How do you explain to people who, because some people do have a visceral feeling about it.
I look, I get it. Like, I don't want to be all callous and stuff. I totally get it because that was a perspective I had for like maybe half of my 20s.
Right. Yeah.
Like that. As I've gotten older, it's like the thing that you really, which is so clear to you, is that how identities and firsts and this type of really superficial angling is just used to launder like the same shit. It's used to launder the same exact shit, except it's just being presented to us as like a little softer, maybe a little bit more feminine, a little bit more friendlier. Right. And it's like, speaking
subversive.
Even like very subversive, right? And it's like, you can't, because we actually have had moments in recent American history, in the last, let's say just 24 years, or even just look at the last 20 years. We actually have had moments of incredible, and I like to use the word insurgent in politics, right? This insurgency of like in politics, and every single time there's been this attempt to really radically push back against the status quo, whether it's Occupy Wall Street. I mean, that's some people I don't like to debate about like the efficacy, but also maybe the authenticity of the creators of Occupy, but like Occupy Wall Street, BLM, Ferguson, right? And then of course like Ferguson, and then again in 2020, and of course like early Bernie before I got a lot of beef with Bernie these days, but those moments, Medicare for all, like those moments were such significant moments that could have really materially changed the trajectory for millions of Americans. And what we find time and time again is that Americans are just kind of offered like little crumbs and carrots, and it fails every single time. So there is a possibility in this country, and unfortunately we keep losing it.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it is also like there's this fear of we can't criticize anyone. It's like, no, we have to understand there's a difference between criticizing for the sake of criticizing. We're like, where it's just like ad hominem or whatever. And then there's actual critique, which is rooted in something more substantive. If we can't separate those two, then, this country and we're all kind of doomed to the world that we are accepting. Because that's what we're doing right now, is we're accepting the status quo.
Right.
And we're saying like, no, you just have to be strategic. You don't understand. No, if there's ever been a time for a radical pushback, for radical accountability, for really saying, no, we're not gonna We're not, yeah, call me a Puritan if you want. I am a Puritan on genocide. I am a Puritan on a suffering working class. I am a Puritan on the fact that the majority of Americans are trillions of dollars in debt, in credit card debt, that tens of millions of Americans are having to work not one, not two, 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I am a Puritan on billionaires in this country making a fortune, not only off of, trying to build an economy which is workerless, but also on profiting off of genocide. I'm absolutely a Puritan on those things, right? But it's like, we need to move beyond this very like destructive idea that like any criticism is just like, I'm just a keyboard warrior.
Yeah. I mean, I've had people who are like, look, we have to wait, like basically argue that there needs to be a moratorium on criticism of Mamdani, because we have to like circle the wagons. But the irony is like politicians need criticism. Like they need the pressure from the other side, because if not, we're just letting that politician be dragged farther to the right. Like even it's not even a question about like whether someone's good in their heart or progressive in their heart. It just, that's how politics work. Like you have to have a counter.
And it doesn't, like, it also is irrelevant what a person personally believes when they are when you are in a public position, especially when you're in an elected public official. It doesn't matter what you say in the privacy of your 4 walls. What matters is what are you doing in a material sense? What are you doing? What are you saying? Like, and we know that language has impact. The words we choose, everything has an impact. And the other thing is, I think it was Mohammed Al-Kurd who said this, right? Which is that while people are not pulling politicians, he was talking about specifically Mamdani, but I think it goes beyond Mamdani, is that while you're refusing to pull your guy to the left, the right is pulling him. And that's what happens, right? It's like, if you're not pulling this way, well, then he or she is getting pulled in the other direction.
Right.
I also like that someone called me cynical and callous, bordering on racism.
Oh, wow.
I'm apparently racist against my own kind.
Yeah, you're self-loathing. I think the word they mean is self-loathing. Yeah, right, exactly. Well, Sana, this was amazing, and I definitely want to have you back on because you're someone who I can talk to. We can talk to about so many things, and the audience can learn so much from. So just tell people where they can find you and your work, and if you're working on anything right now.
Totally. So you can obviously find me on X. I'm on Instagram as Sanaface, on X with Sana Saeed, my full name. And then these days I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to be going deeper into Substack as well, focusing on long form essays, reporting as well. A lot of stuff on just media narratives, power, as how it functions in our news narratives in particular, and how our news media is basically just an arm of the government. And yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. And have a great night. And everyone seems to have really enjoyed this. So definitely let's do it again.
Definitely. Thanks.
Okay. Great.
Bye.
Have a great night. All right, guys, this has been great. And we've only just begun. We got 2 more guests for you coming down the pike. Next up will be Trita Parsi. And then after that will be Max Blumenthal. But of course, if you haven't already, please do like the stream, give it a thumbs up, help make sure that people come over and see it. Help fight back against the algorithmic suppression that shows like these face. Also, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe, hit subscribe, and then the bell. You don't want to miss these additional streams that we're doing. We're going to have on people from all over the world. We're going to do another one either Friday or Saturday. I'll have that confirmed shortly. But put your virtual hands together for our next guest, Trita Parsi, who is the executive vice president of the Quincy Institute and the award-winning author of Losing an Enemy, Obama, Iran, and the Triumph of Diplomacy, and Treacherous Alliance, The Secret Dealings of Iran, Israel, and the United States. So welcome, Trita. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you again.
Thank you. You look like you're in Alice in Wonderland. You have like a rabbit behind you, and all of that's missing is like a looking glass.
I thought I'd change the background for now. I'm outside on my porch. The weather is amazing here in Washington for once.
Nice. Well, we heard that from Sana that there's like a weather watch for snow or something in DC.
Are you kidding me?
Right, Brad? I'm not lying, right?
She said that tomorrow there's an alert for like freezing and hail and things like that.
Yeah.
Even though it's like 80 degrees today.
Yeah. So,
oh my God. All right. I was not aware of that. Well, good thing I'm out on my porch today.
Yeah. Make sure. Hopefully it's not like a permanent setup. I'm sure it's not. I'm sure you can get back inside if you need to. But Welcome back to the show. There's some relatively breaking news, right? So I guess Trump has announced for the moment that he has suspended Operation Freedom, the operation whereby the U.S. military would aid ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Here is what he said. And this was tweeted out by Jeremy Scahill of Dropsite News, but here's the Donald Trump Truth Social. Based on the requests of Pakistan and other countries, the tremendous military success that we've had during the campaign against the country of Iran, and additionally, the fact that great progress has been made toward a complete and final agreement with representatives of Iran, we have mutually agreed that while the blockade will remain in full force and effect, Project Freedom, parentheses, the movement of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, end parentheses, will be paused for a short period of time to see whether or not the agreement can be finalized and signed, period. President Donald Trump, all caps, period. So what are your thoughts on this, please, Trita?
I mean, look, if he is backing down from one of these additional escalatory steps that he was thinking from, we should all welcome it, because he is backing down from the blockade in some ways. I mean, he at least is recognizing that the blockade of the blockade was a huge mistake. It was a mistake within a larger mistake, which was the escalation of the war, or the starting of the war in the first place. According to the White House and FDD, this pro-Israeli advocacy group that pushed this blockade, Iran's economy should have collapsed 11 days ago.
Right.
And clearly it hasn't, and this has actually caused Trump to become quite frustrated, according to Wall Street Journal. And today we saw him with a bunch of kids in the Oval Office saying that all the Iranians need to do is to surrender.
Right.
And this is the same thing we heard back in the summer, that Iran needs to surrender. We heard it in January, that Witkoff said that Trump is very frustrated that Iran has not yet surrendered. And it doesn't seem to dawn on the president, although I think it has dawned on some people in his team, that surrender was never in the cards. And part of the reason why we're in this escalation trap is precisely because he's looking for surrender. He's not going to get it. Doesn't matter what type of a blockade on a blockade he does. It's not going to happen. The only way to actually make sure that this works out some way is to adopt realistic and creative and constructive goals that do advance U.S. interests, but are not based on some sort of fanciful idea that the United States can force a country that has not lost a war to surrender.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. So, that term gets thrown around a lot about United States interests. So what are United States interests, by the way?
Well, it depends on who you ask, of course. But if you were to ask me or people in the restrained community, we don't have a lot of interests in the Middle East. The oil that is there is no longer vital to the U.S. itself as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. I would say that our main interest right now is to keep flows of trade, etc., open, but most importantly, not be involved in a war. That's one of the most important interests we have in the Middle East, because it's not worth it. We don't have vital interests that are worth going to war for. In the past, there was this belief that the United States needed to sustain American hegemony in the region. If we didn't, the Chinese or the Russians would come in, or the Iranians or someone else would try to establish their hegemony. I think we can see quite clearly, not only has American primacy failed in the Middle East, it is not sustainable, it is not reliable, it is not efficient. And now, after this war, we're likely going to see the very same countries that lobbied the United States for millions and millions of dollars to keep that umbrella, to keep that primacy, that hegemony of America in the Middle East, they're actually going to turn away from it. Not because they're going to abandon the United States entirely, but because they're not going to put their eggs in the American security basket any longer, at least exclusively in the American security basket any longer.
Right. By the way, guys, you got to like the stream. Trita, I saw Rania Kalik interview you, and she was unabashed about this. And I do this on my other show, Useful Idiots. For some reason, I don't do it as much on the Katie Halper show. But Rania, the great Rania Kalik, inspired me. Like the stream, guys. Less than half of you have liked it, and I know that not half of you are hate watching. So be good citizens and patriots, and don't let the neocons win and the warmongers win, and like this stream. So throughout the war, including during an April 1st speech, Trump has offered that, quote, to those countries that can't get fuel, I have a suggestion. Number one, buy oil from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And in a Truth Social post from April 11th, he said massive numbers of empty tankers are coming to America now to purchase their oil. How does the U.S. sabotage of oil competition and oil more broadly figure into America's calculations?
Well, first of all, I don't know if that's true, that exactly is what's happening, that there may have been some shift in the market in favor of the United States because you can't get a lot of oil out of the Persian Gulf right now. But nevertheless, that's not going to be a sustainable situation. Look, oil comes in different qualities and different heavy and light, etc. You need different types of refineries to process the different ones. It's not a simple thing to just go from southern to northern Persian Gulf oil, or from there go to Venezuelan oil. So there may be some temporary solutions that are being put in place, but if this is actually going to be something that is long term, it's going to cost a tremendous amount of money, and that's not what I think most countries are interested in doing right now.
Okay, so wanted to ask you, by the way, about the way that this war has galvanized support for the Iranian government. It's also obviously inspired some people to call for, in the diaspora community, to call for the bombing of Iran. What is your relationship with people in Iran? Like, do you have friends and family there? Do you talk to them there? Obviously, Iranians are not a monolith, but what are you hearing from on the ground?
So I do talk to quite a few people inside the country. It's been difficult for times because of the blockade, on the internet blockade that was particularly in around January 8th and for about 10 days after that. Since then, it's slowly but surely opened up, but it's still been a little bit difficult. Look, you have quite a variety of views. And I think if we take a look at what happened in June, when Israel first attacked Iran, there was an immediate wave of nationalism that swept the entire country. But 2 months after that war, most of that nationalistic fervor had essentially died down, and people were back to their ordinary lives, and they were very upset at the Iranian government with its repression, its economic mismanagement, corruption, etc. And then, of course, we saw some of the biggest protests in January, only a couple of months after those attacks. Right now, there is once again a lot of nationalistic fervor. There are, at the same time, strong sentiments against the government that has essentially been put on pause because the country is at war. But once the war is over, once a couple of weeks or months have passed, I think we're going to see a very different situation. Now, how the war ends is also going to have a significant impact on the aftermath of the internal situation. If the war ends in some sort of an arrangement in which Iran gets some sanctions relief and the economy has a better trajectory than it had prior to the war, then there may be ways to, the population will still be very upset at the government for a variety of reasons, but you may end up actually having a situation that slowly but surely would improve for average Iranians. If you don't have that, if you don't have sanctions relief, and the economy is in even worse shape than it was before, $300 billion of damage, a government that is, more hawkish than it was before the war, then you're likely going to see more protests, and you're going to see far more repression after that as well. So it kind of depends on what happens. And here, I think, in Washington, a lot of people are saying that, they want to stand with the Iranian people. What I think is a couple of things that should be very clear. Bombing the country is not to stand with the Iranian people. Sanctioning the country into death, into absolute economic strangulation, in which the weakest elements of the society pay the highest price, is not to stand with the Iranian people. It may sound counterproductive to some people within the Beltway, but actually lifting the sanctions and giving the country an ability to be able to breathe economically in the long run will be much better for the cause of democracy and freedom and openness in Iran than going for this type of economic strangulation. There's only one country that has transitioned towards democracy under or as a result of a major economic blockade in line with what we have on Iran, and that is South Africa under apartheid. That's the only example. In every other case, those countries have tended to become more repressive internally to keep the population in check, as well as becoming more adventurous externally in their foreign policy.
You played a role in the negotiations between Iran and the U.S. In reaching the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. I want to know what surprised you most about that. Also, what you think has changed since then, and why during a recent interview I heard you say that the era of U.S. primacy is over.
So on the issue of the JCPOA, are you talking about what was most surprising back then?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Or most
Well,
like
I mean,
noteworthy, or you think is most like enlightening or illuminating to understand where we are today?
Well, that's a great question because it really puts a light on how a lot of things are done the wrong way, but also that under Obama, with all of the different flaws that he had as well, there was a foreign policy approach that is fundamentally different. The Obama administration understood that there needed to be a compromise. So they engaged in real negotiations with some real give and take. They negotiated very hard. The whole thing took 2.5 years. It didn't need to. It did because both sides were just negotiating so ferociously and being so hard line in their negotiations. But nevertheless, they were looking for win-win solutions and compromises. That's not the approach that the Biden administration took, nor is it the approach in any way, shape, or form that the Trump administration is taking. They're just looking for, as I talked about earlier on, the surrender of the other side. And it's just simply not in the cards. And it seems to me that it's coming difficult. It's difficult for a superpower that views itself as so superior to these other countries, particularly a country like Iran, to actually understand that even with that type of a country, you have to engage in an exchange of concessions and compromises. And in retrospect, it was actually quite amazing that that Obama did this, given where the standard of America's approach to negotiations have been. Now, in regards to American primacy, I wrote a piece in which I argued that the consequences of the Iran war is going to be more far-reaching than the consequences of the Iraq war. In Iraq, the United States actually won the war militarily within 3 weeks. It achieved its political objective of getting rid of Saddam Hussein. Now, a lot of problems came afterwards, of course, but most importantly, won militarily, but it lost the peace. In Iran, the United States has not even won it militarily. One can make the argument that it's been defeated strategically in this war in the manner that the Iranians have managed to find this massive leverage because of their control of the Strait of Hormuz and the inability of the United States to do anything about that militarily. And this tells you something about the United States' ability under these new circumstances in which countries take advantage of the terrain, of the geography, in which they use new technology, very cheap drones and missiles, in addition to fighting asymmetrically, etc., or escalating horizontally, defining the geography of the war, how they can actually deny a superpower, a nuclear superpower victory. If that can happen in the Middle East, it can also happen elsewhere, even in areas in which perhaps that smaller country does not have a strategic waterway as vital as the Strait of Hormuz to control. But it tells you something about the United States' ability to sustain this military hegemony globally. I don't think this repercussion is only limited to the Middle East. It will actually spill over in other areas in Asia, in Europe, in which I think increasingly a lot of countries, close allies of the United States, are going to understand that they simply cannot rely on the American security umbrella and that they need to find at least complementary measures in order to be able to achieve their security rather than just blindly relying on the United States.
And what else did you observe? I mean, how close were you to the power players when you were doing this, when you were
So I was just an informal advisor to the Obama administration, but we were very deeply involved in advising and helping. The organization I headed at the time, NIAC, was one of the few organizations early on that argued that diplomacy could work.
Right.
And once Obama came into power and he wanted to pursue diplomacy, you could look around in the think tanks. All of them had been, writing papers on how to impose more sanctions on Iran or writing papers on how military options would work. Very few of them had spent any time thinking about, okay, how do you actually make diplomacy work?
Right.
So that put us in an important position, I think, to be able to advise. And of course, we were the largest grassroots organization of Iranian Americans. And it was important for the administration to also be able to show that they had the support of that community.
And what does Trump want out of this? What does Netanyahu want out of this? And why did Trump rip up the deal?
So what Trump wants and what Netanyahu wants at this point is very, very different. And Trump should have recognized this from the outset. The United States wanted some sort of a victory. They wanted to see the Iranians surrender, but they wanted to probably keep the country intact. They did not want to see massive instability. Same thing that we saw in Venezuela, that it was more important for them
Right.
to make sure that it didn't lead to instability that could spill over into the United States, which of course in the case of Venezuela was much more of a likely scenario. Whereas from Netanyahu's perspective, he just wants to weaken Iran as much as possible for as long as possible. And if that means a civil war in the country, in which the country is consuming its own power internally, that's totally fine from Israel's perspective. If you take a look at Israel's strategy vis-a-vis its neighbor, it's called, I mean, they themselves call it rather inhumanely mowing the grass. Every couple of years or so, they just bomb their neighbors, making sure that they don't reach the capacity of being able to challenge Israel.
Right.
The Israeli objective was to essentially achieve the same thing with the Iranians. And if you could set them back 10 years and then bomb them again in a couple of years, that would be perfectly fine. But that meant perpetual conflict with Iran. That's fine for Netanyahu. That was never fine for the United States. I don't think it was fine for even Trump. But he went along with Israel's strategy, really believed the Israeli narrative that Iran was so weak that it was just going to crumble after 4 days of warfare, either implode or surrender. And now, 60 plus days later on, we can probably understand why Trump, according to the Wall Street Journal, is frustrated.
And has Israel been strengthened or weakened by this?
Well, I think if you ask the Israelis, many of them would say, look, it may not end in the manner that they wanted, but if Iran's industrial base has been set back a decade or two, if it is faced with all of these different challenges as a result of this, they still see that as a win. I mean, it's the same thing when they bomb Hamas or Hezbollah. They don't have to eliminate it from their standpoint. As long as they just weaken it, they view that as adding time to Israel. Now, it can end in a manner, however, that would be really devastating for the Israelis from their standpoint, which is that if Trump strikes a deal, and as part of that deal, and I don't see any deal that wouldn't include this, Trump lifts sanctions on Iran, that will deeply upset the Israelis. That's really their red line. Because as part of keeping Iran weak, you can go to war, but we see how difficult that is and how much political capital was required to be able to get to that point. But if you have these massive sanctions on Iran over decades, it just slowly but surely destroys the country's social fabric, its industrial base, etc. So it's bad enough from the Israelis that the war has ended, but if sanctions are lifted, that's when you will see that they will be really objecting to this.
And I just, I still don't understand what it is. Maybe this is naive, but what is like Israel's ultimate? I know they want to kill a lot of people, but what is their ultimate goal vis-a-vis, like they want the greater Israel project, but what do they want vis-a-vis Iran?
Well, look, Israel believes that its security is not achieved by managing threats. It believes its security is achieved by eliminating those threats, which means that it views itself invariably being in a state of perpetual war with its neighborhood, and that it just needs to keep everyone else as weak and incapable of challenging Israel's desires for greater Israel, or as one could also call it, military hegemony in the region. Iran was one of those countries that clearly had the capacity of challenging that. In many ways, it has successfully challenged that. The Israelis could not go to war with Iran without the United States. They could start it, but they could not finish it. We've seen that when the Israelis thought that they had already defeated Iran, immediately their focus shifted towards Turkey and started talking about the Turkish government being the biggest threat in the region. Erdogan is the most dangerous person in the Middle East, according to the Israeli media. And this is ultimately devastating for Israel itself if it's just constantly going to be at war with everyone in the region. We've never seen any country be able to sustain that for particularly long and actually be prosperous and survive.
Right. But they have this unique support from the United States.
Exactly. You take that out, there's no way the strategy is going to be able to be sustainable for even a couple of more years. And I think the support from the United States is really coming to an end because the generational shift on both the left and the right is just massive and is growing stronger and stronger.
And then what happens?
Well, then, Israel may end up in a scenario in which it will have to become a normal country that has to compromise with its neighbor in order to be able to have peace. And perhaps ultimately that's the best thing that could happen to Israel as well. But it would necessitate that there is not a compromise, but an acknowledgement and acceptance that Palestinian self-determination and dignity has to be upheld, and it has to be part of Israel's security as well.
Yeah. Do you have a hard out right now?
I have to run right now.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Any final words? Anything you want to make sure that you say before?
You mentioned earlier on in the interview that you shamelessly plug the show and ask people to subscribe. So if you give me a second, I want to just also say that I'm shifting a lot of my activities now to Substack as well, in order not to be dependent on Twitter or any of the other platforms. So I'd love for people to follow me there. I'm at Trita Parsi on Substack, at T Parsi on Twitter, and you can go to the Quincy Institute's website at quincyinst.org.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Trita, and we will link to all of your sites.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
Of course. You too. Okay. So everyone should obviously follow Trita and his writing. We are waiting for our next guest. In the meantime, Brad, why don't you come in and say hi to everyone? Read some super chats. I'm going to try.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. All right. Let's see. Let me call our next guest. Can you read some? We do have some super chats. Not that many. So we can also, what can we show while we are getting ready for our next guest? Oh, well, okay. Nate is suggesting the J.K. Rowling thing, but then I can't call our next guest while we do that. So, let's see. Brad, why don't you read the super chats very, very, very slowly for a second while I literally just call our next guest.
All righty. I'm laughing because there's the first one. Thank you so much, Barbara Chiali, for the super sticker.
Yes. And we can read at normal speed because our guest did just arrive.
Oh.
Yeah.
And Texas Real 007. Thank you very much for the very generous super chat. Great lineup this evening. Thanks, Katie and Old Blue Eyes. Is that me?
Of course that's you. It's not me. It's not Trita, and it is not
Wow.
although it could be our next guest, actually.
No, it's
That's
me.
unclear which blue eyes we're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's so nice.
Well, speaking of old blue eyes, let's bring back, thanks, Brad. We're going to swap out one blue-eyed boy for another blue-eyed. We're going to swap out a blue-eyed goy for a blue-eyed boy chick. All right, Max doesn't like that.
Is that an insult to me?
We're going to get into that another time. We can't even get, no. That's something we'll talk about another time. All right. Welcome to the show, Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone. Hi, Max. You're muted.
Are my eyes blue enough?
Yeah, I think, they're not quite as light as Brad's, but you do have a weird buzzy sound. Hold on. Say something. Count to 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is it buzzing?
A teeny bit,
yeah. I've noticed that on a few
interesting
voiceovers I've done. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. He's gone into voiceover work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Remove me for like 5 seconds.
Sure, yeah. So, we should do a whole episode on that term goy. It's very complicated because it's not quite. And oh my God, when I tweeted something about this, I brought out a bunch of anti-Semites because a bunch of people who were like, it's not up to you, a non-Jew, it's not up to you to define whether it's offensive, because it can be offensive, but there's a lot of range to it. But the funny thing is, when I looked at the people's profiles who were saying that to me and who were being very like identity politics about it, like as a non-goy, it's actually not up to you to define it. I looked at their things and they were just like they happened to be like raging anti-Semites. It was pretty funny. And they had stuff like on their Twitter timeline, like, it's actually not un-American to ban Jews from organizations. We've been doing it for a while, but not in a like, I'm going to critique U.S. history way. Okay, let's try to bring in Max again. All right, Max, you there? Say something.
Goyim.
Okay, hello. All right, well, the Buzzy Goy, that's what I'm going to call you, the Buzzy Goy. So Max, thank you for joining. It's always great to see you. There's so much to talk about. let's start off by talking about this really scary and important case in England, in the UK, that you guys at the Gray Zone have been covering, and it is about Pal Action. And then we're going to get into a stabbing that happened. But backing up, let's talk to, which is unrelated to Pal Action. Tell us about this case, this Pal Action case, and also what you guys at the Gray Zone revealed and discovered.
Well, we had to reveal how this case was a gigantic stitch up because we're an American outlet. And in the UK, you can't do that. It was like there was a full media ban ordered by the court on reporting any of the key points of this case, including that the defense lawyer.
Oh, and by the way, just so people know, stitch up means in British informal slang, it's like a framing.
Yes.
Of someone for a crime. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
So, framing, a setup.
A setup, yeah.
I think people know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But like Rajiv Menon is the name of the defense lawyer for these defendants. And he is facing trial himself on contempt of court charges because he effectively defended a previous defendant in a December trial, who is one of them. And this is a retrial because they got off in December.
And
so do you understand that? No, the defense lawyer is being tried because he succeeded.
Right.
That's how much of a setup this is.
Okay.
And we broke that story because we're American, because British media is not allowed to report that the defense lawyer was on trial, was actually facing contempt of court charges.
Right.
The interior minister, what's her name? Yvette Cooper.
Yeah.
She too was facing contempt of court charges for lying about Palestine action in an op-ed. And it was completely dropped. She was just let off the hook because she's the interior minister.
Right.
The judge is named Jeremy Johnson, and he is the former barrister for the MI6 and Metropolitan Police of London. And he is the man behind this stitch up issuing all these orders. He is the only one in that courtroom given latitude. No, the only one in that courtroom who was allowed to know, other than the defendants and the prosecutor, that the defendants were actually on trial for terrorism charges. The jury did not even know that they were facing terrorism charges. They thought they were simple criminal charges. So after the jury convicts these defendants, the judge, who's the former lawyer for the MI6, Mr. Establishment, gets to sentence them for terrorism. And we reported that. We broke that story as well because we're American, because you're not allowed to know this if you're a member of the British public. So I'm just laying this out to explain and elucidate how insane this trial was and how, I don't know what the word is, anti-democratic, authoritarian, the British government and British society has become. Keir Starmer approves all of these actions. This is all coming from the top.
Right.
And so let's step back a little bit. What is Palestine Action? Why are they such a threat? I think this is one of the most important things that anyone watching this should know is Palestine Action is being treated this way, and they're being set up in order to proscribe them as a terrorist organization on par with Al-Qaeda.
And let me just show people what Pal Action is, because I think how scary they are is very evident in this photo.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a nice photo of them, but they really are a threat to these British special relationship with Israel, if you want to call it that. And they do engage in direct action. They use hammers, they use spray paint, they do vandalism, they break into facilities, they do stuff you're not supposed to do, which is considered law breaking, and then they get off. Why are they doing this? What are they attacking? They're attacking, or they're occupying and attacking weapons and industrial facilities belonging to Elbit Systems, which is the state weapons system, the main state-owned arms company of the state of Israel. And they have these factories all over the UK on British soil. And they'll break in. They try to make sure no one's in the facility.
Right.
They avoid hurting people. They attack weapons or computers. And there's always a clean room, a room that has often has sensitive technological components, guidance systems, and they try to contaminate the clean room, which will often shut these facilities down for long periods. Then they go before juries of their peers, and the juries come in and they hear these are crazy radical terrorists who just love smashing things and they want to destroy our way of life. And then they hear from the defendants, and they realize the defendants are actually rational people who argue that they are trying to save children from being slaughtered in the besieged Gaza Strip, and that the damage that they're carrying out is actually saving lives, and that the damage that these Elbit Systems factories are carrying out are far more harmful to humanity than what they're doing, and the juries let them off. Again and again, they get let off, and the factories, the cost of doing business is getting too high. So it's frightening Israel. This is so much more effective than any other form of activism on the planet. Not on the planet, sorry, but throughout the West, directed at Israel. It's the most effective form of BDS activism, but it's also very, it's a high risk.
Right.
You have to be really, really committed and willing to go down for several years to even take this risk. So these are very brave people, but they're also effective, and they're capitalizing on the fact that most British citizens are just simply not on board with Israel once they learn what's being done with their tax dollars on their soil. That's why in this case, as we reported, we broke the story, I think.
Yeah, you did.
We didn't even put a byline on the article because I take full credit for it as an American, that no one in this, among the defendants, the Filton 6, were allowed to even mention Elbit Systems. No one among the defendants was allowed to even describe the target of their activism. None of them were allowed to use the term genocide or to discuss what's taking place in the Gaza Strip, use the term apartheid, and so on. So they were basically prevented from defending themselves while their defense lawyer was on trial for contempt of court for being too effective. People outside the Old Bailey courthouse, supporters, were not allowed to hold signs instructing jurors of their right under British law to rule according to their conscience. They were arrested for holding signs advising jurors of their rights under British law. So rights were stripped outside the courtroom, inside the courtroom, and as all this was happening, a new knife-wielding terrorist suddenly appears to justify banning the phrase "globalize the Intifada."
Right.
And you could go to jail for 14 years for stating those words. So what's going on in the UK? Is this really the UK?
Right.
Where are these instructions coming from? Why is this such a threat? These aren't British weapons factories. These are Israeli weapons factories. It just looks like a kind of like a political occupation. And the jury clearly was not on board in this case, as they haven't been in the past. And many of the charges were thrown out, but the most serious one is of his last name is Corner. I'm forgetting the full name of the defendant. He was I think it's the first time when a Palestine Action defendant was accused of grievous assault and bodily harm, grievous bodily harm.
Yeah.
Because he mixed it up with, he tussled with a security guard. The jury was not allowed to see the full, what was his name?
Oh, here.
He's the first one.
Here it is. Okay.
Samuel Corner. Yeah.
Okay.
Two of them got off, I think.
Right. And here, yeah, keep going. I want you to have this.
So Corner, he fought off a security guard, or he like is accused of striking a security guard, but the jury wasn't allowed to see the full video, the full CCTV, which shows that the security guard was actually whipping him and the others with a kind of like a lasso or like an actual electrified whip or some kind of weapon, which led it to the melee or the exchange. So Corner faces the most jail time, and it's up to Judge Jeremy Johnson, former barrister for the police and MI6, to decide how long he'll go to jail for under terrorism charges.
This is a document, right, that you guys got your hands on. To the extent that you can, how did you access this?
Well, we accessed it the same way that British media would have, but unlike them, we were able to report it.
So if you were in Britain,
obviously we got it from the court.
Right. And if you were like a British person, a British journalist in Britain right now, and you were telling me this, or you were showing me this document, what would happen to you?
Well, I think now they're allowed, British media is allowed to report on this. I've seen them kind of come out with the Guardian reported that Rajiv Menon is facing contempt of court charges for defending his clients too well.
So can you imagine if this happened in like Russia or Iran, how much Western media would be talking about this authoritarian state?
I mean, that's obviously the thing, is that this generated zero coverage in the US outside of us. And, there are other publications that, who are our friends and in our circles who would cover this, but, mainstream media doesn't understand. It's bizarre to me. There's just so many. I mean, it's why the Gray Zone exists, or why the Katie Halper Show exists, and why we have a fairly large audience, is because Western mainstream media doesn't report what's actually taking place right before our eyes, which is just a gigantic scheme to strip us of our rights in order to protect this psychotic little apartheid state, which has no borders and is constantly expanding. What's happening right now tonight in New York City under the watch of Jessica Tisch at the Park East Synagogue. It's like, this isn't being reported as we and most people see it, which is that they're doing a land theft auction. They're authorizing and engaging in violent colonialism inside a synagogue. And the police have cordoned off a 2 or 3 block radius, and only visibly Jewish people are allowed inside the cordon. They've created some kind of like Jews only zone to ward off protesters, while the city council is voted almost unanimously that you can't protest near a synagogue.
It's so disgusting.
And synagogues are being used as cover for violent colonialism. They're linking Judaism to violent colonialism, then howling anti-Semitism anytime anyone justifiably protests. And then they enact their puppets in any legislature or city council to limit our First Amendment rights, to take our rights away. And that's how anyone who's paying attention sees it, but Western media reports it as a tense scene as a synagogue is protested, anti-Semitism allegations. And if you're just like some casual reader, you think, oh my God, these are anti-Semites, or Palestine Action, these are crazy terrorists. But the real story is just the complete, that the Israel lobby or the Zionist movement has become the foundation for the destruction of democracy.
Yeah, exactly. And, it is so disgusting for them to obviously like stand behind a synagogue in order to try to shield their genocidal real estate grabs. I mean, what could be more disgusting? And then, as you said, Max, this is so important. They themselves want to hold all Jews hostage, basically. And obviously, you and I would agree that there should be more Jewish opposition to what Israel's doing, definitely on an institutional level. But they will stand behind a synagogue, try to drape what Israel's doing in like Judaism per se, and then accuse anyone who's critical of it of being an anti-Semite when they're the ones linking genocide, a live stream genocide, to Judaism.
Yeah. It's kind of it's a more theoretical discussion than we have time for.
Sure. Yeah.
I should mention that, just for the purpose of that point, I mean, Park East Synagogue, it's not representative of, the kind of American Jews who live in Brooklyn and New York who are, more like the traditional Yiddish socialist types or the DSA types who, are involved in all kinds of progressive activism.
Right.
It represents the very elite right-wing Likudnik upper crust of sort of like the Epstein class Jews who are on the Upper East Side who, would freak out if anyone would call for the electric chair if someone ripped down a hostage poster after October 7th.
Right.
Jared Kushner has attended services there with Ivanka, who was converted to Chabad. So that just kind of gives you a sense of who goes there and what it's really about. But you're standing on the outside. You're not, if you're just you don't live in New York, you don't exist in that world, or you don't know a lot about Jewish life and you watch what's happening there, you think, well, Jews are just selling Palestinian land inside a synagogue. This is like some kind of satanic cult.
Exactly.
Like, this is evil.
Yeah.
And they're down to represent themselves like that because then they can just accuse everyone of being anti-Semites and take away our rights.
Yeah. So,
Katie, sorry, I just wanted to see if you wanted to take a look at the the Intercept had something on this, and I thought that this was
let's see. And also, Max, is this where the rabbi who said that Zoran was an anti-Semite over the line about when the police, the NYPD steps on your neck, the boots were laced by the IDF.
Oh yeah.
That's where that This is where we had a rabbi, a female rabbi, call him anti-Semitic for saying that, and also for saying there's genocide. Okay, but what's happening now?
Well, I just thought you might find it interesting, this little bit here, which talks about the Expo, the website of the Expo, and referencing this cluster of 20 settlements, and they go on to say that this is located south of Jerusalem under international law. These are considered illegal. I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, I've been to Gush Etzion. It's one of the major settlement blocks that's used. It was set up actually as part of the Labor Party's settlement plan to prevent Jerusalem from being the capital of a Palestinian state. And it's been expanded under Likud governments, but it's like a major, it looks like a city, but it's over the 67 line in the West Bank, and it's there to encircle Jerusalem.
Right.
And this quote here, it says, the pro-settlement movement around the world and most Israelis do not make any distinction between Israel and the West Bank. The idea is that all of this is, and I'm sorry, Katie, can you read this for me?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at
I don't
Eretz Yisrael.
Hebrew for the land of Israel, and it belongs to the Jews because God gave it to them.
Yeah.
So
and then the Intercept attended the event Tuesday. Just inside the synagogue, a large welcome sign specified that the event was for, quote, information purposes only, and, quote, more than a dozen tables advertised the services of real estate companies, most of which promoted glitzy luxury buildings in Tel Aviv, Netanya, and other cities inside Israel's internationally recognized borders. At least one company, Hare Zahav, displayed a map of properties in Kfar Eldad, Karnei Shamron, and other Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Brochures at the Hare Zahav table offer detailed looks at properties in these settlements.
And in this, it also shows how Mamdani came out opposing this.
Yeah.
But I don't.
This is the one. Yeah. Mamdani issued a statement, or his spokesman said, he opposes it.
I don't know,
Max. But they support, safe passage to the synagogue so that people can.
I don't know, Max, if you have any idea of it wouldn't seem to me, could Mamdani do anything to not have that happen? Does he have the ability to do that, or no?
I don't know. I don't.
Pal out.
I don't know, but he's this is set up as a trap for him as well.
Right.
And he's caught between his base that wants him to oppose it, and
and the optics of a synagogue,
a New York power structure that wants to catch him doing something
Right.
You know, where like a Jew gets, you know, hit by a protest sign on the way, and
Right.
he said, you know, they shouldn't be going there. So he incited this attack, and then, you know, they released the hounds on him.
Right.
And he's trying to pretty much avoid this issue because he wants to focus on cost of living issues and more popular initiatives so that he can sort of establish a real legacy. I mean, he clearly wants to stay away from this. And then you have Jessica Tisch, who's, you know, one of the three most powerful New Yorkers, who is an arch Zionist. And she's got such a disproportionate NYPD presence out there, shutting off so much of the city, so many, like several square blocks to prevent people from protesting. And I don't think there's ever been an incident where protesters have like done anything violent to a synagogue. Right. But I'm getting back to the UK.
Yeah.
The UK doesn't have, you know, a freedom of assembly in its constitution or charter. It doesn't have free speech. So it's much easier for them to limit the rights of those who are trying to disrupt this genocidal regime.
Right.
And its special relationship and influence over our governments. So when you look at the UK, you're seeing what our government would do if it could.
That's a good point, right? Yeah. Now let's get up that document again. I want to show that document because they lay out very kind of overtly what they're doing to stitch up for the stitch up. And this is the order. Okay. So these are the things that they're saying. This is a draft order regarding closing speeches. Upon the court's ruling dated, okay. So it is ordered that the parties must not, in their closing speeches to the jury, this is back to the Pal Action case, the Elba Systems case. The parties must not, in their closing speeches to the jury, without first securing the court's permission in the jury's absence before the start of closing speeches, A, invite the jury to apply the principle of jury equity, refer to the principle of jury equity, invite the jury to disregard the court's rulings of law, refer to rulings made by the court in the absence of the jury, inform the jury that a judge may not direct a jury to convict. So can you explain what these things mean?
Jury equity just is a right under British law, which allows the jurors to consult their conscience and rule on that basis. And they are not allowed to know that as they enter that courtroom. And therefore, supporters of Palestine Action outside the courtroom have been arrested for providing jurors with knowledge of that right by holding placards telling them they are allowed to rule on their conscience, based on their conscience, which is how other jurors issued verdicts in the past, exonerating or acquitting Palestine Action defendants, which kind of legitimized the model of protest that they were employing. So this is like what they're trying to do is set an example here, as was done in the Middle Ages when someone would commit a crime. You know, they didn't have CCTV in a medieval village or in London, in medieval London, let's say. You know, it was impossible to enforce the law on a society-wide basis the way it's done now with like predictive policing and everyone under surveillance. So they'd make an example of someone and just hang them in the town square or quarter them or torture them, and everyone else would be afraid. That's what's being done here. That's what's being done in the case of this stabber who actually stabbed a Muslim man. Well, they only stabbed a pair of Jews.
Okay, set this story up because this is kind of incredible, and they do go very well hand in hand. So if you read the headlines, there's a stabbing of 2 Jewish men that happened in London, right?
It fits perfectly with what's taking place with Palestine Action, which is that
we're gonna make some of the stabbing, some of the Max chat will be Patreon only, and you are really gonna want to see that, really. But then, you know, I always feel so bad. I hate denying people stuff, but you know what? If you saw it live, you got to see it. And if you don't see it live and you want to see it, you'll become Patreon, or you wait a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And that they make the program.
If there's a very rich person who wants to give us $1 million, So we never up to Patreon everything. That would be great. But until then, yeah.
Well, and I know I say it, but another way to look at it, the Patreon that makes this possible and gets you everything literally amounts to 25 cents Monday through Friday.
Yeah, that's it. Not even 7 days a week. Yeah.
Right.
So this was a great show. So grateful to everyone. If you haven't already liked this, please like this. Please do subscribe by hitting subscribe and then the bell. Thanks, Katie. I always share your testimonial where you got 2.2 million views about the kind of Jewish talking about the kind of Jewish person you are, because you said it all for me. Thank you. And that's a reminder, Brad, we have to start making those straight to camera videos.
Yep. And before we head out this evening, Katie, do you want to, I noticed after we read the first 2 super chats, we got quite a few more for you to read through.
Great. Okay.
So thank you so much, everyone.
So, thank you, Piano Man, for the super sticker. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Piabjer, for the thank you for all your important work super sticker. Thank you, Mystic Mac, for the Max Blumenthal is an absolute legend. Great show, Katie. Thank you. Thank you so much, Celeste Holmes. Given how much control Zios have over every level of government, how do you not conclude the U.S. has been couped? Well, yeah, that's perhaps. But remember, yes, that is. I mean, it's the sad thing is it's Jewish and Christian Zionists. We'll get into that another time, though. Okay, thank you for the super chat, Tirana Hamdi Parker. Thank you for this super chat and the howdy message, John Jarecki. Starmer and 3 male models in court now. Arson. I don't get it. Someone tell me what that means. Excellent work as always. Thank you. Thank you, Exit. Super sticker from the unknown. Thank you so much. Super sticker from James Chant. Thank you so much, James. Great name. It's my dad's name. Oh, yes. Okay, thank you for this. Wow. Okay, Joey Hins writes, condolences to Tiago and family for the passing of his mother, Teresa, earlier today. This is something I actually wanted to bring up, which is the fact that Israel has kidnapped and tortured many of the people who participated in the latest flotilla, and they are still holding Tiago Avila, who we interviewed on Useful Idiots, and Saif, who, in fact, hold on one second, Saif, who we interviewed on this very show. One second. We had him on. He took place in the global march to Gaza. We had him on. We had a couple people on. Saif Abu Kashek. And he and Tiago are both being held right now. And tragically, Tiago's mom died. One second, let me see. Thank you for reminding me of this. I wanted to mention this, that Israel is doing something absolutely disgusting. And yeah, here it is. Okay, it's Global Samud Flotilla posted this. I'll just do a screen share. Thank you so much, by the way, for reminding me, because I actually meant to post about this. Okay, so here we go. Okay. Teresa Regina Davila Silva, Tiago's mother, passed away in Brasilia. We express our deepest condolences to Teresa's family and loved ones. She was 63 years old, a woman of remarkable joy and great strength. She faced years of serious illness with courage, serenity, and dignity, driven by an unwavering will to live and surrounded by the unconditional dedication of her family. Tiago's 2-year-old daughter carries her name. Rest in peace, I don't speak Portuguese. Masegao, your story lives on in our struggle. And this is him and his mother. And I would assume that's his sister because they look a lot alike. So that is very sad. Yes, she died. And oh, look at this. Don Zion writes, and now her stupid son will spend time in Israeli prison for being a good for nothing bum. I know I shouldn't write that, but like read that. But it is just that is like Zionist morality for you in a nutshell. Who the hell writes that? Yeah, he's spending time in a jail in Israel because he dares to think that Palestinians are human beings. Here it is. Israeli soldiers beat and tortured flotilla organizer Saif Abu Kashek and Tiago Avila after abducting them in international waters near Greece in the early hours of Thursday morning. Lawyers and diplomats have said after illegal intercepting. Wait, am I showing this, Brad? Am I showing the Yes. Okay. Phew.
Yes.
After illegally intercepting 22 boats and kidnapping around 200 activists hundreds of miles from Gaza, Israel transferred the majority to Greek authorities but refused to release Abu Sheikh and Avila. Instead, it transported them back to an Israeli desert prison where Palestinians are routinely tortured. Brazilian activist Avila was dragged face down across the floor and beaten so badly he passed out twice, lawyers said after visiting him on Saturday. His wife, Lara Sousa, said an embassy official told her he had been temporarily blinded by his injuries, with his left eye still swollen shut, but he was being denied medical treatment. In a brief visit where he was separated from the consul by a glass screen and not able to speak freely, he reported pain all over his body, especially in his hand and shoulder, and said that soldiers had threatened to throw him overboard and target his wife and 2-year-old daughter. Abu Kashek, who had been sailing on an observer boat and did not intend to go to Gaza, was, quote, in shock, end quote. His wife, Sally Issa, said he was forced to lie face down. By the way, Ann Wright had asked me to do that, to go on this boat that wasn't going to go all the way to Gaza, because I guess she knows I'm not a brave enough person. I'm not insulting her to like go all the way, but it's kind of scary to think that like I mean, whatever. It's just, yeah, you can't, if you're doing anything remotely around Gaza, you just can't count on them not attacking you regardless of your intentions, even if you're not trying to go all the way there. Abu Kashek, who had been sailing on an observer boat and did not intend to go to Gaza, was, quote, in shock, end quote. His wife, Sally Issa, said he was forced to lie face down on the floor of an Israeli warship for 2 days, lawyer said, blindfolded and with his hands bound behind his back. Spain has demanded Israel release Abu Kashek, who is Palestinian but holds Spanish and Swedish citizenship. On Friday, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said he had been illegally abducted by the Netanyahu government. On Sunday, the activists appeared before an Israeli court where a judge extended their detention by 2 days. So, like, okay, it's just Netanyahu. No, it's Israeli society, and that's why a judge extended their detention instead of releasing them. Lawyers demanded their immediate and unconditional release, telling the court the entire process was, quote, fundamentally flawed and illegal, end quote, and describing Israel's actions as, quote, retaliatory measure against humanitarian activist leaders, end quote. The two men have now been transferred back to solitary confinement in Shikma prison, where they are being held in windowless cells. Both are on hunger strike, with Avila saying he will not leave without Abu Kashek. And this is them. I mean, how disgusting. How just absolutely disgusting. Like in this case and in the case of London, basically the people who are punished are the ones who are protesting and trying to stop a genocide. And the people who have nothing bad happen to them are the ones who are engaging in or defending a genocide. Absolutely disgusting. Okay. Well, thank you guys again so much for watching the show. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Nate. And thank you to all of the audience and to all of the guests. And we will see you either Friday or Saturday for sure. We're doing another stream, either Friday or Saturday. Stand by. We'll tell you exactly when. And then, of course, we will do our show next Tuesday, as always. Bye, everyone.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
And I don't know what the I'm doing.
Mark? Oh, yeah, I do.